Okay, this is the second part, second half, if you will, of our chapter 10. We just left off with elimination disorders. Okay, now we're going to go into sleep and wake disorders. Okay, so researchers and clinicians in sleep medicine typically take a biopsychosocial approach to examining different issues with sleep. Okay, we look at genetic and neurophysiological contributions. Sorry. Okay, there we go. I thought I was going to sneeze. We look at psychological interactions. We look at social and cultural factors that may impinge on the individual's sleep quality and their sleep quantity. Okay. The clinicians need to perform a thorough evaluation when clients present with sleep-related disturbance. Okay. Polysomnography. Okay, this is a fancy word for a sleep study. This sleep study records brain waves, it records oxygen levels, it records heart rate, breathing, eye movements, leg movements while you're sleeping. So generally what happens is that you'll go in for a sleep study and you go into a sleep lab that includes psychologists and physicians and nurses and some other people, and they will put you in a room where you will sleep. And the idea is they hook you up to all this stuff so that while you are sleeping, they will record everything that's going on and try to really figure out what's happening. Now, with the psychology part, we also want to be looking at what are this person's stress levels, what's going on in their life now, what's gone on in their life before, what about sleep routines, sleep habits, sleep, what we call sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is sort of your bedtime routine, right? We talk about, okay, do you come in from a run and then try to go to sleep? Or do you get off the phone after a stressful conversation with your mom or boyfriend and then try to go to sleep? Or do you take some time, settle down, get into your PJs, brush your teeth, read or play a game or whatever it is, get in bed, turn the lights off, go to sleep, right? That's good sleep hygiene. Good sleep hygiene also includes going to sleep at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every night or every morning. Okay, within our sleep-wake disorders, I'm going to go through these, okay? Let me just look at this real quick. Yeah, okay. I thought this is the only way that I put this on here. Okay, so first we have insomnia. Insomnia is difficulty. There can be a few different kinds here. It can be difficulty initiating sleep, meaning falling asleep. It can be difficulty maintaining sleep. So some people fall asleep easily, but then wake up in the middle of the night. And now I'm not talking about like you wake up to go to the restroom or you wake up briefly, look at the clock, and then fall back asleep. But I mean where they sort of wake up and they have a really, really difficult time going back to sleep. And the third option here is what we call early rising or early morning awakening. And so that is maybe they're able to fall asleep, maybe they're able to maintain sleep, but they wake up early, unwantedly early, right? So they wake up at 4 a.m., not because they have something else to do, but because they just can't sleep anymore, okay? And there's different reasons for these different things, but insomnia would be one of those three things or a combination of those. Now, the next sleep-wake disorder is narcolepsy. Narcolepsy has been demonstrated in some movies. It is recurrent periods of irrepressible need to sleep, lapsing into sleep, or napping within the same day. Okay, so again, this is where like you can't stop yourself from falling asleep. If you've ever been in class and you feel like you need to put like pencils near your eyelids to keep yourself awake, or you need to kind of pinch yourself to keep yourself awake, these individuals feel that, but more intensely every day, many times a day. Okay. The diagnosis also requires either episodes of jaw opening, excuse me, or losing facial muscle tone while laughing, or showing abnormal central nervous system or sleep disturbances on the polysomnography. Okay, so basically this person, and the reason they do it in movies is because the idea is that you're just going about your day and then all of a sudden you fall asleep. And if you're standing up, it can be dangerous. If you're driving, it can be dangerous. Some people with narcolepsy are not allowed to have driver's license, right? So, excuse me, you'll have to deal with my sniffling and my coughing. I have a cold, but know that we need to get this lecture up so you guys can watch it and you can learn and you can study. Okay. So the next one would be hypersomnolence disorder. This is recurrent periods of sleep or lapses into sleep during the day, prolonged main sleep episodes, or difficulty being fully awake after abruptly waking. Okay, so this person basically has trouble not sleeping, oversleeping. Insomnia would be not sleeping enough. Hypersomnolence would be sleeping way too much. Then we have our breathing sleep-related disorders. The main one that you'll hear about is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is where people just kind of stop breathing in their sleep. And for most of us, we do this at some point. If you've ever had that feeling of like falling and all of a sudden you, wake up, that usually happens because you've stopped breathing just for a moment. It's not dangerous because your body woke you up and it said, whoa, you stopped breathing there. Okay. Sleep apnea would be frequent episodes of not breathing, of apnea or hypopnea, right? Hypopnea, while sleeping as indicated on the testing, along with either snoring, snorting and gasping, or breathing pauses. Okay. We're going to have daytime sleepiness and fatigue because this person is not actually sleeping well. They're not actually getting oxygen to their brain the way that it needs to be in order to have refreshing sleep. I hope that makes sense, right? So if you're not breathing properly, if you have this, obstructive sleep apnea or any of the sleep apneas, if you're not breathing properly, you're not getting the oxygen to your brain you need while you're sleeping, and therefore you're exhausted when you wake up. Okay, central sleep apnea is frequent episodes of apnea. Stress-related hypoventilation would be episodes of decreased breathing while asleep. Okay, so just decreased breathing. All right. A couple other ones we have. We have the circadian sleep-wake disorders, and then we have the parasomnias. So within the circadian sleep-wake disorder, we have this persistent pattern of sleep disruption due primarily to altered circadian rhythm, okay, or misalignment in the individual's internal circadian rhythm, right? So circadian rhythm means sun comes up, sun goes down. It means a 24-hour cycle, okay? So maybe this is required because somebody's work schedule is that they work, a few days in a row and then they don't work at all. I mean, not days, I mean like a few 24-hour cycles in a row, and then they don't work at all, or the person works night shift and is trying to sleep during the day. And the idea is that circadian rhythm is off. So irregular sleep-wake type. We have non-24-hour sleep-wake type, and we have shift work type. You also see circadian rhythm disorders in individuals who are blind sometimes, and they end up getting off on their 24-hour cycles. The sun is very important for us to sort of realize when we're supposed to be awake, when we're supposed to be asleep. We are animals that that function in this 24-hour cycle. Okay, now let's talk about the parasomnias. We have non-REM sleep arousal disorder. REM stands for rapid eye movement. Okay, so non-REM sleep arousal disorder. That is recurrent episodes of incomplete awakening from sleep, accompanied by one of these things, either by sleepwalking, sleep terrors, and not associated with rapid eye movements. Okay? Now, we want to talk about nightmare disorder. So actually, what do I want to say? I want to talk about for just a minute the difference between nightmares and night terrors. So nightmares are we wake up and we remember, or generally remember what's going on, and we feel scared and we feel uncomfortable and we feel worried. Night terrors are when somebody just all of a sudden wakes up from sleeping or is still asleep and just starts yelling, just like kind of screaming in terror. Sometimes people stay asleep during this. Sometimes they wake up and are doing this, but they don't know why. So there's not a reason. They don't remember a dream. It's just sleep terror. Okay. Nightmare, so nightmare disorder is repeated occurrences of extended, dysphoric, and well-remembered dreams that typically involve threats to one's life. So it makes people not want to go to sleep. It makes them have restless sleep. It makes them exhausted in the morning after continuously having these nightmares. Okay. Now we have REM sleep behavior disorder. So this is rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder. And that is frequent episodes of arousal during sleep associated with speaking or motor behaviors. So basically, this is the person that talks in their sleep regularly. This is the person that sleepwalks regularly. It doesn't have to be a problem unless, obviously you want safety, so you want to make sure somebody doesn't go somewhere they shouldn't go. You don't want people walking out the door. You don't want children or people doing dangerous things. And you also, as far as the talking, it can be frustrating for people if you have someone that you sleep in the same room with. That can be frustrating for them. Now, let me go to this. You're welcome to wake somebody up that is sleepwalking. Nothing terrible is going to happen. Their brain's not going to explode or whatever it is, right? I love the movie Step Brothers, and of course in that movie they have episodes of sleepwalking which are hilarious, and the parents are worried that they can't wake them while they're sleepwalking. But truly, that is a myth. You can wake somebody up. Their safety is the most important thing if they're about to walk out the door. But you can wake somebody up gently and kindly and say, "Hey, you're asleep. Everything's okay. Need you to come in here." Okay. The last one here is RLS, or restless leg syndrome. You may have heard of this one because there's some medications that came out for it not too long ago, and so therefore people have bought commercial time. Restless leg syndrome is this urge, but almost crawling, intensely uncomfortable urge to move your legs. Okay, it's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant sensations. The urges begin to worsen during periods of rest or inactivity that are partly or totally relieved by movement. Their worst or only occur in the evening or nighttime. So that is when somebody finally stops and sits down and relaxes. Their legs start to get this crawling, like, I need to move them, I need to move them, I cannot relax thing happening. And again, it can be really disturbing to, obviously, the need for sleep. Okay. Moving on here. We're now going to talk about disruptive, impulse control, and conduct disorders. This grouping of disorders includes diagnoses that are assigned to individuals who have difficulties regulating their emotions, regulating their behaviors, and whose behavior violates the rights of others. Okay. So the first one we have is oppositional defiant disorder. This is typically diagnosed in children. It typically becomes very evident between ages of 8 and 12, but I really see a lot of people that complain about younger children having oppositional defiant disorder. But statistically, you see it, most evident between ages 8 and 12. Okay, this disorder is characterized by angry or irritable mood. This child tends to be argumentative, they're defiant, they have a bit of vindictiveness. It really ends up having a lot of problems in family or in their school environment. Oppositional defiant disorder, if not treated appropriately at the time, progresses to conduct disorder. So to be clear, these are two disorders that do not coexist. They are one or the other. So you have oppositional defiant disorder, and then conduct disorder is basically like a step up from oppositional defiant disorder. Usually when people and parents talk about their child having oppositional defiant disorder, they talk about them having no respect for authority, right? They have no respect for authority. They basically seek out adults and argue with them, or whether it's, physically fight with them or verbally argue with them, but they are, that word defiant, right? If you think about the child who's constantly defiant, intentionally, we call that oppositional defiant disorder. This is treated best by family therapists or by psychologists that are doing family therapy. There's a specific type of family therapy that is parent training, and it's simply, it's called with the parent training component, where we train parents basically how to respond to their children when we do these things, how to respond to your children when they do these things, how to respond to your children when they do those things, how to respond to your children in different ways, and how to reward your children for good behavior. And we usually see some really good results with that PCIT. So parent-child integrative therapy? That sounds right. PCIT. Some people specialize in that, which is just fantastic. And we see it work well. And then we see those children and those families who have been involved in that type of therapy not progress to conduct disorder. If children are in homes that are unstable, that are unwilling to work with them, then that child typically ends up with conduct disorder. We're going to talk about intermittent explosive disorder. This is not only a childhood disorder. Intermittent explosive disorder is an impulse control disorder. It involves the inability to hold back urges to express strong, angry feelings and associated violent behaviors. Basically, this is the person who has anger issues. This is the person who flips out, I think would be the proper term, and to a level that is beyond appropriate, beyond what you would expect for what has been done to them or said to them, right? So angry outbursts, verbal, temper tantrums, tirades, arguments, or physical outbursts. Some individuals become assaultive or destructive. These things are out of proportion to any stress than what you would commonly see. Physical outbursts need to be at least on 3 occasions in a 12-month period. They may cause damage to the individual or other people or property. I think about one of my kids does something like this. Of course, they're too young to be diagnosed with this, and I hope they outgrow it. But when he gets angry, he ends up, throwing all the pillows off the couch in an angry way. it's very dramatic. It's very ridiculous, but he has to put them back on, and then we work on that. But it's just that intense in the moment, I'm going to flip out on you, and then I'm not going to be flipping out. If we think back to the depressive disorders, there is one of the newer disorders, right, that has this sort of intermittent explosive piece as well as the depressive piece. This one is without the depressive piece, but just the explosive behavior. All right. It's estimated that 4 to 7% of people in the US population have this disorder. Of these, 70% have at least 3 outbursts per year, with an average of about 27 outbursts on a yearly basis, right? Faulty cognitions, there's a strong familial component. These things contribute to the development of the disorder. Treatments tend to include antidepressants, SSRIs, and cognitive behavioral therapy. Again, often these people come in and say, my spouse said I need to come in because they say I have an anger issue. I have issues with anger. We call it intermittent explosive disorder. Okay, next thing here is conduct disorder. So remember we talked about oppositional defiant disorder, and that the next step up from ODD is conduct disorder, or CD. This is more vindictive. This is more violating the rights of others. This is more than just being defiant. This is an individual that violates the rights of others and society norms or laws. This is usually what we call this delinquent behavior. Aggression to people, typically cruelty to animals, destruction of property without caring, lying or stealing, serious violations of rules. So such as, continuing to just not go to school, running away from home just because, those types of things. Okay, so we think about that conduct disorder, and this is a childhood disorder. Okay, so we are diagnosing this in children, up to age 18. Around the world, rates of conduct disorder are estimated to be 3.2%, with remarkable consistency around countries, which is so interesting because that would suggest that it's more genetic than environmental. We may see conduct disorder present itself more often in underprivileged communities, but that is more so because maybe the parents didn't intervene and they didn't have the opportunity or the services to intervene when the child was exhibiting oppositional defiant disorder. And therefore, more of those kids are progressing to conduct disorder. These children tend not to have a lot of friends because they fight with them. They tend not to be able to keep jobs when they're teenagers because they don't get along well with others. They tend to have issues with their family and siblings, as well as end up quitting school or getting kicked out of school because of behavior problems, right? Okay. So, impulse control disorders. People with these disorders repeatedly engage in behaviors, often ones that are harmful, that they feel that they really cannot control. Okay, so you have to think about that. They really, truly feel that they can't control these impulse control disorders. After acting on their impulses, they experience this sense of pleasure or gratification. We're about to talk about a few of these. Although later they may regret that they engaged in the behavior. Okay, so they have that same sort of impulsive need to do it, like obsessive compulsive disorder, that intense, remember when obsessive compulsive disorder, we talked about, not cracking your knuckles or not doing this or not doing that you feel the impulse to do. This person feels that impulse, they do it. And then often later they're like, darn it, why did I do that again? Okay. So some of those are pyromania. Okay. So maybe they feel a little bit more than why did I do that again? Build small fires. This impulse control disorder involves persistent and compelling urges to start fires. Right? Fire. To be diagnosed with pyromania, the individual must not set fires for monetary reasons or have other medical or psychiatric conditions. Okay, so they're not doing it for any other reason besides they just really, really have this intense urge to start fires. It seems to reflect abnormalities in dopamine function. And the treatment that we use is cognitive behavioral therapy. And honestly, it's going to look a lot like the type of therapy we do for obsessive compulsive disorder. The next one is kleptomania. Okay, kleptomania is stealing. So the impulse control disorder that involves a persistent urge, intense urge to steal. They don't actually really want the stuff, right? This is not somebody that needs food or somebody who needs to get medicine for their grandmother. This is somebody who they just feel the need to take it, to just stick it in their pocket and take it, or to just walk out with it. Or whether it's taking it from a friend or from, somebody in their sorority, or taking it from, a store or a parent or whoever, they just feel like they intensely needed to. There's this excitement from the act of stealing. Researchers believe that the features of kleptomania also kind of look like similarities to substance dependence, meaning that sort of that urge and that dopamine reaction that you get with substance dependence. People just feel this need to do it without any other kind of reinforcement. Sometimes people steal and then just give it away to other people, or they steal and they hide it, or they throw it in the trash because they feel so guilty afterward. But it is that urge that they can't stop, that impulse to steal. With kleptomania, we have some other symptoms. We have insomnia and agitation and irritability. Medication we're going to use is going to be naltrexone. The other treatment that would be used, not medication here, would be cognitive behavioral treatments. Same kind of stuff. Okay, so look, all the things that we discussed in Chapter 10, eating disorders, impulse control disorders, things like that, we look at all of these from the biopsychosocial perspective, right? Psychological approaches have greater weight than do psychodynamic theories. And I say this in case you end up hearing, those psychodynamic theories, they just don't really seem to hold up as well as just your typical cognitive behavioral approaches. Evidence-based treatment now seems virtually to mandate that clinicians use cognitive behavioral treatments. Okay. Now, some people still use their psychodynamic or analytic or whatever it is, but all of the research seems to show that cognitive behavioral treatments help most. You can use, of course, medications in addition to CBT, but CBT really needs to be used if we're trying to battle eating disorders or impulse control disorders, and any of those other things that we've kind of talked about. Okay, that is all for this chapter. I will see you in the next one.